and just go over a few particulars so y'all can see that, I guess. Just some reminders about the important dates. Your first event preference closes tomorrow. I think that's the 20th, yeah. One of the things that I don't know is when you all look on your dashboards with your event selections, has anybody got put on a wait list? Can anybody offer up an answer to that? Not at this point, I guess. So that's okay. I will say to you, I'll tell you more about wait lists in a few minutes. Let's just get through these dates that are in front of us. Second round preference starts Thursday, and again, you have the week to do that. What I will say to you again regarding wait lists, as you strategize what your second pick is going to be, and if you're stuck with trying to figure it out because for some reason, such as a wait list, what have you, don't hesitate to email me. I'll try to respond to you right away to try to help you. Our goal is to do the best we can to help you make the right picks and get the best picks for you. And we'll see how that all unfolds. A reminder about first choice round 1, November 11th, and the pre-kickoff virtual kit releases at the same time. Just by the way, Paul, do you have anything you want to say to them about MySite shipping for robot kits?
Yes. So last year we had an unusual year, and in previous years I spent part of my fall contacting teams that had selected MySite. So MySite means that you want your kit of parts shipped to your school. The problem with that is that when a single kit is trying to cross the border, it gets delayed usually. It may cost you duties and taxes, and things could get lost. When we ship them all together through our great sponsor in Windsor Centerline, they take care of all of that, so we don't have that issue. And then they're distributed to the kickoff locations for distribution by teams picking them up or a surrogate picking them up for the teams. But last year, because of our situation, first changed it up a little bit, and so because we're no kickoffs, so we had all these people choosing MySite, which is what we had wanted. But now we're back to the normal way we do business, and we want everybody to choose a kickoff location. If you're in a very remote location, we can see about having that kit delivered to you from Studica. That way we know we have it. But we would recommend that unless you're in North Bay or Sudbury or Atikokan or Thunder Bay, that or Manitoulin Island, that you arrange to pick it up at one of the sites, like in London or Studica, Mississauga, or Kingston, and there's several others around the province that you'll see when you go to pick that. If you do have questions about that, please contact me, and we can talk about what you're dealing with and so forth. But very often what we see is someone goes from, usually it's Alex Wilcox, from Ottawa to Kingston to pick up a bunch of kits for the teams in Ottawa. So he would be acting as a surrogate for those teams. So that's something that you can ask about, and we'll provide more information about that later in the next month or so. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to contact me or John or William, and we can help you out with whatever you're dealing with.
Thanks for that update, Paul. Some really good points there. We know that headquarters had put out an announcement just a while ago, a week or two ago, about MySite robot kit shipping. Basically, just in summary from what Paul said, is if it comes through us, through Centerline and the border, we can control it getting in without any issues. We've had a fantastic track record with Centerline over the years, and really no shipping problems at all. Not even back when 772 got late for Worlds. That was not from Centerline. That was because of the headquarters shipping process, which we circumvented now. So that's no longer an issue. So notice the payment for your fees are at the end of November, which is your standard time. And just to reiterate, we did say to you that that point at which once the robot kit is handed over to you, which is typically January 8th, that commits you to the season. So on January 7th, if you got cold feet and you wanted to pull out, you would still be able to do so, and you would have your fees refunded. After that point, it's a different story though. So if there's any other questions, along with questions about that or anything else, please do start loading up the chat with questions, and we'll get our good hockey players, Paul and William, to stick handle those questions for us. All right. I want to segue into this. Come on. I am just, oh, there we go. So just a little bit of information about event registrations to give you a bit of a background. And again, our goal is to help you make the right choices. And we will be absolutely as transparent as possible, giving you pretty much every piece of information that we know about where things are at with event registrations. So far, 85 teams as of first thing this morning, so there could be 95 now, have selected an event. So you might be thinking, wow, 85 sounds like half of 2019, which is true. 2019-20, we had 166 teams registered that year. Ironically, last year during the COVID and the challenges and all that, we had 85 teams come back. So it's interesting that we're sitting at 85 again, but certainly Paul, William, and I know that at this point in the event registration cycle, teams are slow to get in there. Probably there'll be 3 or 4, 5, 6, 10 that are going to register tomorrow, and just sort of see where things are at. I will say to you, from what information I have, and I don't have all the information, I can tell you straight up, but it seems that there might only be 3 teams on a wait list, which is quite good at this point in time. But again, if you do the math, 85 teams have selected one event, divide that by 2, that's 40, 2.5 playing spots out there at different venues. And you know our events total up to 18 teams per venue. So you can do the math to figure out where things are at. So we have lots of room available for our team still. And again, if there's anything I can do to assist you with this, understanding what the chances are to get into an event or whatever, I'll be happy to share that information with you. I will say an update from last week. We were very much hoping for a hybrid of judging, where we have some judges at the event and some not, and so on. We have been informed by headquarters as of yesterday that they want to retain the 100% remote judging. So chances are that's what it will be. We're still going to try to move forward with this to some degree. I don't know what success we would have with that. It might be limited to having match observers at the competition, just so that they could give feedback to the judges remotely to tell them this robot really deserves a quality award or the innovation award or whatever. And I think that'll help to solidify the judges' decisions. Okay. Any questions at this point, or shall I just go on? Okay. So I do have a very important announcement to make. And what part of this announcement is spurred upon feedback that we get from our teams and the community and what we hear back from you, in addition to us connecting with teams individually or mentors individually to try to understand your situation out there as far as how the team is structured, the number of people on the team, finances, and what that all looks like. So on the topic of finances, I just want to go over a couple pieces of information with you. I think people don't fully realize that when you pay for the season, so when you pay your $7,500 or the rookie fee, That money is a pass-through. So it comes to us just so we can save you the hassle of the US exchange. And then we send that directly to headquarters. So headquarters gets that money. First Canada is a nonprofit charitable organization. So really everything is passed through. It might also surprise you to know that when we host tournaments, these competitions, and all the AV that is at those tournaments and the expenses that are associated with those tournaments, we raise funds to pay for those tournaments. Our sponsors help with that. The government Ministry of Education gives us money to help with those larger expenses. So I just really wanted you to know that First Canada just does all of its raising of funds to try to support our teams and give you opportunities to play. When you think about last year, one of the things that headquarters was going to do, they were going to try to offer teams an opportunity, and they sort of did, which was pay this partial fee, and you're going to get your robot kit, you're going to get the challenges, and then we'll see if tournaments happen. And if you remember last year, we waited till the end of January before we said whether or not there'd be tournaments. And if there were going to be tournaments, then there would have been a fee added. So an additional fee. So it's sort of what we say at headquarters is last year, the fees for the tournaments and the robot kit were decoupled. So they were taken apart and separated. That would be an interesting topic going forward, of course. But it's important for you to know what you're looking at this year. So you're getting your robot kit. We are planning for the in-person events. And we have heard some feedback from you about we're not getting 100% of what we typically get when we pay our $7,500 or rookie fee. And I'm going to address that in just a moment. Again, we have heard from teams about they need financial help. We know that the competition experience, we are doing our best to make it exactly the experience that you're always used to getting. And we think we have come close to that. A lot more work still has to be done, and a lot of details have to be ironed out with our district key role leads to help us make sure that we get the best mixture of what the competition day is going to look like for you. So I'm very pleased to tell you that after listening to your feedback and having discussions with First Leadership Canada and our board of directors, so we have a board of directors and we have an EAB or an executive advisory committee board. And we talked with them about some of the feedback we've gotten from our teams. And we wondered if there was a way we could help our teams. So it was a unanimous decision by everyone at First Canada leadership that we should do something for our teams. Absolutely unanimous. And so what we've decided to do is, I'm going to go to this next slide. So First Canada is going to give each team that participates this year $1,000 to help with whatever expenses you have for this season. So we're calling them assistance with the competition season. So when you think about it, whether that's money that could go, towards this or towards that or towards travel, if you happen to have some hotel or robot parts, whatever, we want to try to help reduce that burden for you, minimize the hurdles that are in front of you. So I want to tell you a heartfelt thank you to the senior leadership by taking your feedback to them and having these conversations. It was a very quick turnaround. To get all those people together, just a few days. And again, it was unanimous. So the details around this are not fully worked out yet, but every team that participates will get $1,000. And you will hear more details on this as we get going, but that money won't be released to you until sometime in the early new year. But before that time, we will obviously give you more information. We're certainly going to know more about what this looks like from our standpoint after the registration cycle ends. And the other hope of telling you about it now is that it will also spur teams that were just sort of on the edge or the fence on whether or not they'd participate, that, you know what, here's a little bit more help to help you get going. So in reality, your fee for this year would be $6,500, not $7,500. And I'm going to open the floor up to questions now.
So I see there's a question there, John. I think it's a great question, and it will be probably one of the most common questions. Can that $1,000 grant be subtracted from registration, or is registration unchanged and this money is given to teams later for their expenses later on?
Yeah, I'm going to call upon that word again, decoupled. So that $1,000 is decoupled from your registration fee. So on November 30th, you would pay your fees as normal. Again, keep in mind that money gets passed through to United States, and headquarters has a process in place, as you already know, regarding the season ahead and vouchers and what happens if this happens, that happens, and that happens. So rather than us get in the middle of all that muddy water, we thought this would be the best way to separate things out. So let's keep those questions coming.
So the question now goes to the judging piece. When will remote judging take place? Can it take place before the event?
Yeah, so even if we had the hybrid model, there would be judging ahead of the event. We're not 100% sure what that looks like, but we do have a draft schedule of sorts, I guess, where so much would be done in advance. There would also be remote judging done during the weekend at the events. And then, of course, there would have to be some type of announcement on who were the award winners. And we still plan to do that on the First Canada Live segment, so that we're not taking away anything from a team that couldn't attend Sunday because they participated on Saturday. And again, think about the reasons or rationale why we would do that. The goal of these events are to give as many people an opportunity to be in a single place, to participate with robots, enjoy that experience, but also be safe. So rather than have it wide open and just let anybody come and anybody bring anything and the public come and have lots of judges and have people come back on the second day, that's not going to work. We would restrict that. The key piece, though, or to thread the needle, so to speak, is that a reminder that the teams that do play back to back would be allowed to leave their robot overnight in the pits, which makes a lot of sense, and also be given some time to work on those robots. And again, trying to nudge that needle back to as close to the normal experience as possible.
And the next question is really interesting about the number of teams that ends up at an event. Say there's a team or a event that should have 18 teams, but it only has 14 teams signed up. What happens then?
Yeah, so those are the problems that we're starting to mull around in our minds and our discussions now here at First Canada. So we don't have concrete answers yet, but logic would tell you if there's only 2 teams registered at one event, what would we do? Would we cancel that event? And how does that impact awards being spread over 2 days, 2 single event days? That equals 1 group of awards. So a little bit complicated in that regard. Is it possible to collapse one day at one event, one day at another, and then join the 2 days left over? That's possible. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but we'll know a lot more in about 10 more days. And again, keep in mind, all of these questions we typically wouldn't be entertaining at this time, especially in this given year. But the fact that, you know, as we reiterate every year, please register as soon as you can. For us, it would be great if a team in May re-registered their team right away for the next year. That data helps us plan so much in advance.
The next question concerns the possibility of a positive case at the event. Again, that's foretelling the future many months in advance in a very highly evolving situation. I'm sure our COVID task force will have something to say about that. I haven't seen it, but it may also fall under public health guidelines. I don't know if John has any more to say about that, but that's the
Yeah, and you
general.
know, I will say that somebody brought that question up last week. I think it's a fantastic question. We don't have the rock solid answer for you now because it's just not been fully worked out, but our COVID task force will have an answer specifically, but it will also be guided by normal public health guidelines around what's supposed to happen, but also the venue. So if you think about each venue, whether it's a university, college, or high school, they're all going to have policies in place. If somebody has a positive case, what happens? So obviously that chain of command will be followed. But again, we really do appreciate that question. Anything you guys can ask us to nudge us, especially if it's something we haven't thought of, we want to hear about it so we can get on track.
There are two questions here coming up. One concerning what might happen to a team registered to compete in back-to-back events, 2 days worth of events in one location, and then one event changed. And I think that falls back to John's previous comment that it may, well, we'll be answering those things in the next little while.
Yeah, and again, we can't control who registers where and how many people register for an event. That's up to all of you. But in the past, what we have done in such scenarios, depending on how far we are away from the 18, let's say it was 3, so we had 15 teams register, then we might try to either, the first step would be ask somebody if they would move, especially if there's a wait list. 2, we would look to giving a third play to teams in our district. And 3, that long range possibility, typically we would do this, but we may not do this year. We'll have to wait and see, which would be, would we let a team from outside the district in to take up a spot? And then 4 or 3 or 4 would be how do we cancel and merge days of single day events?
There was a question about 1 versus 2 day events, and it was rightly pointed out that there are no 2 day events planned for this year, but that's the traditional before the pandemic approach, having a whole weekend or 2 days of full competition. So those competitions allowed for a few more matches and a few more things like social events and different scheduling and things like this was a bit spread out compared to what we're planning this year. And this year was largely designed to allow teams to get permission to be able to participate by not having to stay overnight. I think that's the advantage for this year.
Yeah, and you know, another, I guess, positive spinoff with 100% remote judging, which we all don't really like, I'll just say, is that it now lends more time back in the day. So that could mean a couple of things. Could be a later start, earlier exit from the building, or more matches for our teams. So I have to wait and see what our gurus, district hero leads work out as far as the schedules and we've asked them to work with us on some draft schedules. And as soon as we get one that we think is workable, we'll share that out with the community. It won't be official because it has to go through headquarters and get posted on the website. But we'll try to send something out ahead of time to you. And it'll be consistent across all the events, regardless of the venue.
And there's a question about the requirement for 2 adults to accompany the students, especially at the smaller venues, Victoria Park and St. Mary's. And
we're talking mentors, right?
Well, adults, so I suppose mentors, teachers, responsible people over 18.
Well, sorry, can you read the question?
I think the question gets at, because we have reduced capacity due to COVID, do we still need 2 adults to accompany the students? And I think we probably are designing the new capacity limits around these 2 adults, but not sure.
Yeah, there will be a total number per team of bodies allowed to come in from that team, and you will make the decision on who's there. Typically you should have your 2 adults, but that's up to your team management. We can't, you know, you could come to the venue with 2 adults and somebody has to take off and go get something for the team and there's only one of you there, right? So you have to plan accordingly. but it'll be a total number, and we will expect adult supervision. One of the things that happened before, we had one of our events, and the two mentors went out shopping and left the students in the pits during the competition, working on the robot, using power tools and all that stuff. So we obviously had to stop that.
Okay, there are a few questions, and I've seen Paul is also offering to answer a few of the questions offline here concerning when to register students and the like. We also have a question about remote judging. Are the matches also going to be remote judged, or only the robotics teams and their robots?
Well, again, that has to be worked out. One of the things, though, we're going to do, and I don't know if that's actually James Farrar that's with us tonight or not, or that's just his name being used. But James, if you are there, one of the questions that, or one of the comments I'd like to put to the audience is what we're planning to do to enhance the visual piece of the matches, whether that's more cameras or not, what that's going to look like, what would the audience see at home, how might it facilitate scouting, for example.
Great, and I guess building on the video feed comment, the next question is actually concerning the video feeds with respect to scouting and a full field video full field video view, and particularly multiple views if possible. That just allows one to get much better feel for the events on the competition floor.
Yes, good point. And I'm making side notes over here to make sure that we get back to you with information on all of these. For sure, we are planning on enhancing the optics of the event virtually. And I'll just have to check back in with our key people to see where we're at with that. We've got our AV companies, the warehouse, and of course our district key rollies again that are helping out with assessing what it is we need, what we can do to enhance the viewing of the matches.
So I believe there is some kind of requirement about 2 adults being with the team. I remember having to deal with that, and YPP, I think I've seen it mentioned there, something of that effect. It's probably a good idea anyway. You'll need 2 adults to help with various things. The next question then is, competing all weekend at one venue versus 2 weekends, 1 day at 2 different venues. And I think that was discussed last week. There's maybe, for more competitive teams, there may be a slight difference in the ways to accumulate points. It depends on how competitive your team is. If you're just out for the experience, there's no difference at all. If you're out to make it to the World Finals, then you may want to do some closer analysis. I think that may be the way that it's handled by various teams at various levels.
Well, just to add to that, I will say some of what I've noticed with the event selection so far is that a lot of teams seem to be picking their first choice is Sunday at events. And that was interesting to see. So the most popular day filled up at tournaments is Sundays, if you can believe that. So I don't know if it's just wanting to use that last day on the weekend, or if that's a strategic move, what have you. The other thing that, again, it's up to you to do what you want to do, how many events you want to put your team number down for with the lottery. But there still were a fair amount of teams that identified 4 different events. So I guess that just opens you up more to, you could get into your 3rd or 4th pick instead of just your first one. But again, because things are so in abundance right now with spots, that I think everybody's going to be fairly happy after this first round. We'll just see what happens going into the second round. That's the big piece, right? And that's the piece that we really want to try to help you with. Again, it's in most particularly the teams that are trying to get to the same venue, finish your 2 events in 1 weekend and you're done, one and done. If you think about it that way, that's great. And just to reiterate, if you haven't figured it out already, I'm sure you have. We have 1 event weekend 1, 0 events on week 2. Then we have week 3 and week 5 with 3 events on 1 weekend. And we just have to pull out the magic with all our volunteers to execute those 3 events. And then only 1 currently at the end of the season. And please go ahead and ask any questions you want. It doesn't have to be regarding tonight or 2 event selections. We're happy to chat with you.
And I think that there's only 1 question right now. Okay, it's more chat going on right now. Is there a possibility of an event coming back, alluding to recent changes in the event schedule?
Does that question mean a venue coming back as an event like Western, or does that mean going back to 2-day events?
That's how I read it. And there's a yep there. Yeah.
Okay, I gave you 2 choices. So which one was it?
So yeah, it's the Western event coming back. I think that's probably.
Yeah. You know what? If there was a chance we could get Western back, we would get them back. Right now, it's just not, they're not able to commit to anything at this particular point in time.
There we are. And if it happens, can we change an event?
Well, if it happens, then we would be informing you that there are opportunities at the Western event. Would you be interested in going? But that would have to be a controlled move because we wouldn't want to punk 2 other events. Take, like 7 teams from each of those other events or 9 teams from across there and put them into 1 or 2 days at the Western event. I will say, and I haven't really had a chance, I meet with the district key role leads in a few days, so I haven't had a chance to update them, but we do have other opportunities or aces up our sleeve, so to speak, where if we suddenly needed more tournament single days or what have you, we would have access to them. And keep in mind that to have more single days would mean you'd naturally go in 2s, right? You'd pick 2 more days and 2 more days, not 1 on 1 weekend and 1 somewhere else. I'm glad that makes you happy, Paul, with the other days or the Western event and what have you. Again, we just can't control what other people do. And the other thing that could happen, we could be in the situation regardless, because a venue could call me tomorrow and say, sorry, our senior leadership has said we can't support the event. And that still could happen, right? It could happen in January, it could happen in March, we don't know. Be a bit of a repeat of what we've gone through in the past.
There is a question about vaccination rules, and I'm not sure I understand it. Since not everyone will be at the matches, we can relax this rule. I'm still not quite sure what that refers to.
Yeah, I'm wondering, sure, please do give us more details on that, but I'm guessing.
It's
go
me.
ahead.
The
Yes.
question was because FRC mandated vaccinations and anyone who had to be on the team had to be fully vaxxed. Now, since not everyone will be at the tournament, I imagine we can still have people work outside of the tournament on the team who aren't vaxxed.
Yeah, we can help give suggestions and hear from other peers on what they have done in certain scenarios. We certainly can't tell you what to do, other than uphold the policies that are out there. But there's still a few wrinkles to be ironed out on our side of things as far as, what is the government policy closer to the event as far as a non-vax person because due to medical reasons or what have you. And then what would we do and how would we entertain that piece? So it's very difficult to say that at this point in time. We are working on those policies in the background and we will be ready for them for sure. Again, it just all boils back to the government and what they're going to say at that point in time, because we have aligned our policies with the provincial government. That said, there are, would the non-vax students be scouters that are doing this scouting virtually? What a very, very important job amongst all the other important jobs that a team has.
Oh, thank you. Paul has a hand up here.
Yeah, I think Cheryl's question is the difference between Cheryl's rules as a mentor for her team, as opposed to First Canada's rules and the venue's rules for events. If a student is not going to an event, are we saying as First Canada that they can't be on the team because they're not vaccinated? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Cheryl, I think that's what you were saying.
Yes, we meant because of first said vax, so we mandated, we said you have to be vaxxed to be part of the team. So now things are a bit different now. I imagine like the scouting or maybe the social media, the social media team or whatever teams that would not be actually having hands-on on the robot. I guess you can be part of the team, you don't have to be vaxxed to be part of certain sub-teams.
Yeah, putting it that way is real interesting, and I apologize for not capturing that clearly, Cheryl. We don't govern how you run your team. In our statement, we put you are strongly encouraged to have everyone vaccinated for all these reasons, but we have no jurisdiction over your team other than we're not going to let you into the building if it doesn't meet our guidelines. We're not going to let you participate or have these certain students there if the consent release forms aren't properly done, or if you don't have adults there to supervise the students. But that's as far as our governance go. How teams structure their teams is another situation. But it does bring up the point, and I've made a note of this, which is, so let's just say Paul's old team has, he's from a school board, and we do have school boards that it's pretty open in some of the school boards. So if the school board doesn't force the students to all be checked or vaxxed or whatever, and on that team, there's 5 students that aren't vaccinated, but then they don't come to the tournament, but the rest of the team does. How does that work for protecting everybody at the tournament? Like if they're not vaxxed and they potentially pass something on to a member that does come to the tournament, now what? So interesting question.
John, may I ask another question?
Sure, please do.
Okay, so talking about the Saturday, Sunday one site, how does that impede or impact the team as far as qualifying for, let's say, provincials, worlds, or whatever? Has that been worked out?
Well, you're going to get your points like you normally do. There's a little bit of give and take here. If you play both days at one event, you can only qualify for certain awards, but you can't win 2 of them just because they're 2 single events, because they share one pot of awards, the judged awards. But the other awards, or playing in the playoffs and being a winner, will garner more points for you. So you'll be able to take those points to help you qualify for the district championships. Teams that are really laser focused on points might strategically look at purposefully doing 2 separate events because they want to make sure they have a chance to pull in more points from winning the award at another event that they couldn't win on the second day of the single event weekend. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure whether or not we're going to stay and not have to move the robot or find another event on another weekend.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work with headquarters around that piece a little bit. The awards piece, as far as points and all that, everyone. I can't tell you any more other than that, but maybe the next time you hear an important announcement, it'll be some information around something to do with points in the district model for awards.
There's a little discussion in the chat here suggesting that were you to have your students at your school classified as participating in a high contact sport, it might be more permissive for the students to be able to engage in the robotics activities. So you might want to refer to the chat there.
Yeah, I've actually heard that from some school boards. Even the school down the street here from me, they've got the big article in the newspaper, big full page ad about both junior and senior football teams participating fully this season. Come out and watch and so on. So obviously that school is already supporting contact of sorts. But very good discussion going on there. One of the comments about vaccination status and who's allowed to ask and who's not allowed to ask. So we're aware of that. And again, our CTF, our COVID task force, they already have a process outlined on how they're going to be able to ensure the people that are coming to the event are vaxxed without having to break that privacy or confidentiality piece. And the comment about robots, if you're back-to-back days and so on, not having to move the robot. So let's say you were going to go the weekend of the 3 events. So you've got North Bay, Durham, and Windsor. And you're going to do Saturday at Durham and Sunday at North Bay. Obviously, you got to get your robot and you got to get on up to North Bay or wherever the tournaments are, or wherever there's other, 2 tournaments in the same weekend. The big advantage of being back-to-back at the same venue, again, is that you get to leave your robot there. However, if you split the days up, one Saturday here and then another weekend down the road, you get that time in between to work on the robot. So there's the big disadvantage, is it's the one and done. You haven't had a chance to do any upgrades to the robot within the rules and guidelines. So that was one of the reasons why we tried to find a way to say, yes, anybody going back to back would be able to stay and work on the robot in the pits afterwards. Again, we'll have to wait and see how long that time is, because it all depends on how we work that schedule out with our district key roles and what demands that puts on the extending the day in terms of it being a 14-hour day instead of an 11-hour day or what have you. And again, there will be definite rules about who's in the pits, who's not in the pits, to try to minimize that traffic flow. You're certainly, the pits are going to be different than you've seen them in the past, where you're not going to have elbow room only in the pits because there's so many people in there. It's going to be limited, and we'll have to wait and see where we can carve out extra bits of time to make sure that you have the maximum time in the pits with your robot.
So the load time question came up, and I know from my participation in several venues, load times have different approaches. In Ryerson, it was highly regimented every 15 minutes. In Western, it was kind of just show up casually and hope for the best. And I think that was the case in Windsor. I'm sure we will have the possibility, at least considered, to load some of the robots in the night before, maybe the Friday night if it's a Saturday event. And that might reduce the overall load lineups if we already have half as many teams. I'm sure each event is going to reach out to the participants and give them the particulars of the load time, because it does vary by the facility.
Well, for sure. One of the things that we strive is to bring as much consistency to the events and the schedules as possible, due to the fact that regardless of the venue capacity, that it's still 18 teams. So that is a control measure that helps us understand or be able to implement consistency within the schedules. So we will offer a window the night before, but it's optional. It's 100% optional. And then there would be a window in the morning. So obviously we're going to have some volunteers come in, and then some teams can load in the morning. But going back to the point about scheduled entries, like on where we tell you a time, we probably don't have to do that this year, because if you think about it, our small events are 30 teams, and so that's almost twice 18. So we're half the teams, so we'll be able to get those teams in a lot quicker. And even if you divide it in half again, and let's just say it was 9 on the night before and 9 on the morning, so now you're only loading in 9 teams. So you can load in 9 teams in a relatively short period of time. The key problem we're going to have is, how do we manage inspection? What does that look like? So I don't have an answer for you, but our key roles are mulling it over, and we're going to try to figure out something that's going to work for everyone.
That's an interesting question in light of social distancing. I imagine we have to have, even when you're loading in, or even like, how does that going to be? It's a contact sport. What does that look like?
Can you say that one more time, Cheryl?
Social distancing. So, okay, we're loading.
Yeah.
There's usually a long line in loading if we're supposed to respond to social distancing there. And also, too, what does social distancing look like in the pit?
Yeah, so if you go on our website under events, you will see the details of the policies that we have in place now that are continually being updated. We have more. We have another spreadsheet. So what's up on the website is only a snippet of what we've got. We're developing more, and we've got some information on the website about spacing or distancing, but we're also now working out where I'm redrawing all the venues with 18 pits instead of the 30 to 36 pits. That gives us more room in our pits. Pits are going to be spaced out. The actual booths are going to be spaced out more to generate that extra space in there. Limited flow of people in and out of the pits. And then we've got even some plans on how we would address the bleacher part. The whole idea of how do we manage who sits where, and how do we do that equitably? So y'all know that first thing in the morning, the team tries to line up at 5 a.m. to get those first good seats in the bleachers and all that stuff. That's not going to be necessary this year, because we're going to have something in place that you will already know where you're going to have zones, seating zones within those bleachers to the best of our ability. As far as the teams loading in, we can easily space people out that way. Again, we've got half the teams than normal coming to the event, so we should be able to manage. But these are all really good questions. Please keep the questions coming, or comments, and challenge us. Give us one that we can't answer. I shouldn't say that, because I know there's too many smart people out there. They're going to just throw the questions in there now. If there was a terrible blizzard, and that whole idea about entry and exit, access to the building, we'll have to wait and see where COVID is at that point in time. But I mean, it is possible there would be protocols in there that people will be limited from entering and exiting the building. Same as entering and exiting the pits. But we'll have to wait and see how that all works out. It may not be that much of a problem by the time we get to the tournaments, we'll see. Yes, events are looking for volunteers. Phil Hormosky is the VC lead for a volunteer lead for Ontario. You could email him, or you could certainly go sign up on the websites in the BMS or in your, when you log into First Inspires, and start nominating yourself. And if you don't know how to do that, just send one of us an email and we'll pass you on to the right person. We're definitely going to need volunteers, especially on weekend number 5, where we have 3 events.
So we had a question there about helping other teams in the pits, and a few other questions that have now come up.
So I'm looking for that question about the pits.
Oh, that's above the volunteers question.
How about just reading me the question?
Oh, can we still help other teams in the pits?
Well, I assume so. Obviously, with sensitivity to the distancing piece, and also not putting yourself in harm's way, I guess. Not that you would be, because we're going to ensure it's as safe as can be. But again, it brings up that scenario about if you're going to work on somebody else's robot, but that team doesn't have a policy back at the home site to limit non-vaccinated students, and they're touching that equipment, and then that robot comes into the tournament, and then you're touching somebody else's robot, then what? So I don't know. And I guess that's a question for the protocols for FTA and CSA, and how they're going to manage assisting teams when the robot's not functioning properly.
Here's a question that is grasping at the new schedule, and I know the new schedule hasn't been released, but the question concerns a time between matches, and that already varies. Like I remember some matches we're already asked to line up by the time we're finished one match, and that was before this all happened. So it may depend on the total amount of time allotted to the matches versus the number of matches for each team, and then it averages out.
Sure. So again, I'm going to mention our key role leads. They will think of every scenario that could happen and try to structure how we roll out the day to be able to meet those different situations that could happen. So one example would be, do we do so many matches, like, an hour of matches and then pause for 15 minutes, and then an hour of matches and pause for 15 minutes, something like that. One thing that you should know, that if we play anything close to the normal rotation of matches, we typically start the season off planning for about 8 to 8.5 minutes, and then it gets dropped down to 7 by the time we're halfway through the season. So we get quicker at what we're doing. So again, everything's a trade-off for us. Do we schedule a tighter day? So either we're playing faster, so 8-minute cycles, or do we go with 10 minutes, which has buffer time built in? Or is it better to have a break after so many matches? And I think maybe after every 1 or 2 matches, a bit of a break. That was one suggestion that I have seen in our Slack group. That's not a bad idea. Again, the trade-off is the more downtime we have of not playing matches, the less matches can be played. So when you think about the overall number of matches, we're hoping for 9, and if not more. Now that the awards are going to be shortened, quite likely. So we're going to be able to gain back about 45 minutes in our schedule.
Also, there's a question about lunch ordering and eating in the stands and all of that. Again,
yeah, so we're gonna, that's gonna be part of our discussion with all of the venues to try to support. We will be pushing for that. First Canada will. We know that the more that the food could be brought in, the less chance there is of people going in and out. And that's going to help all around. I don't know what that's going to mean for the venue itself. If there's like right outside the doors of the gym where the field is, there's Tim Hortons and Subway or what have you. We'll have to wait and see. And we'll talk about all those details there. I will say to you, you never got to see it happen, but for all of you that played in 2019, we had an absolutely fantastic district champs, absolutely stellar, except for one thing. And if you remember what the one thing was, and I'll give you 10 seconds to put it in chat, see who gets the answer right. What was the one thing that did not go well at the 2019 champs? Okay, that person should know. The idea about food. And my goodness, I remember walking around and thinking, this is such a fantastic event. And then I got pulled over saying, Hobbins, you have to deal with this. There's problems with food everywhere. And anyway, what I want to tell you in a long-winded way is that in 2020, First Canada negotiated, paid money to buy out the venue so we would be able to allow our teams to bring food for district champs. So we were so excited that when you got to district champs in 2020, it would have been so enjoyable for everybody, but it never materialized because of COVID. Yeah, I hear you, Erwin. Okay, but we don't want to keep you any longer than you need to be. Any last comments, things, anything you want to share with us about anything to do with this season? Yes, Parth, I hear you. That's so true. In the cubes. That's why the power to the tower didn't work, because people had put food in their cubes. Yeah.
That would have helped for your balance of the scale if you had that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'll second what Parth said for sure. Okay. William, in case some of the good people that are with us tonight weren't in attendance last night, do you want to just share
Oh, yeah,
a little bit about what transpired last night?
Last night we had up to, was it 85 accounts signed on for our first coding session. And we had about an hour and a half of introduction to Java, very introductory. In the first 3 sessions, we'll just go over the basic syntax of Java. And then we'll move throughout the remaining weeks before the Christmas holidays into more FRC focused Java. And possibly one idea that came out of our very high participation was to have some kind of co-opetition towards December to consolidate some of the learning that we've done. A kind of little coding competition that may be easy to participate in by just submitting a little bit of code and seeing how it runs in a wider program. And we'll see what can happen there. And we'll be very happy to welcome more coders into our next session. That'll be on Monday at 7 and continuing all the way till about this, I can't remember if it's the 18th or the 20th, the first Monday before the holidays, I suppose. Oh, yes. And after the kickoff, then we'll have a series of more advanced topics covered in our coding sessions. We also are very happy to have seasoned coders join us for guest sessions. If you know how to do Vision or PID or just basic Java, anything in between, very happy to have you join us and just reach out by email.
Good stuff. I guess the last thing we could sort of share out with people, a little bit more information. Last week, we told them about the EveryBot session that we're going to do the 3rd week after kickoff, because there's lots of time, because there is no 6-week build anymore, that we're looking to expand the EveryBot locations, which is basically a 2-day quick build to build the EveryBot design. And I think, Paul, do you want to just mention a little bit about where those possibly could be, those venues?
Well, we think one is going to be in Humber at Humber College. We're working on that, and we're hoping to have one in the east in Kingston at a build facility that Team 7480 has. And because it's always a topic, perhaps in London at Western.
There you go. Yes, so that word just keeps coming up.
Yeah. I think Paul Dawson seems to be, I could say London and I bet he'd applaud it, or Western. He seems to be all in. Maybe he owns a lot of purple clothing. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Paul Dawson, a few years back when, I'm trying to remember. So Eugene Porter, we had loaned him a robot, and he had it in that build facility, you know, the new building, which is just about, I don't know, 400 yards from where we played the game in the ice rink. And there I was back in the day when Paul and I and Mark Bredner would drive those 26-foot trucks full of the robotics game fields and all that stuff, jammed right up to the hilt. And there was me trying to drive that 26-footer. And if you know what I'm talking about, Paul, you got to go through the gates where the guard is, to pay for parking, but then you got to make the sharp turn and go down this sort of little alleyway into the back area to try to pick up that robot from him with that 26-foot truck. It was an absolute nightmare. I think it was probably on my way to the Western event. Well, you know what it was? Maybe it was the Western off-season event, and maybe he was lending a robot for one of the rookie teams. Yes, so there's a question in the chat about being absolutely sure that you can do 2 one-day events at any venues you want, or both at the same venue. Okay. Well, it's always a long day for staff, so I'm going to recommend that we say goodnight to everyone. We thank you again for coming. I want to reiterate that honestly, don't hesitate to contact me about the event selections if something's coming up and you're not sure, what have you. And stay tuned for more details about the seasonal financial support from First Robotics Canada and in our board of directors to try to help out all of our teams. All right. Okay, I think that's a wrap.
Thank you very much. I just saw one last minute question here about CADing online, other suggestions for how students can learn skills for building prior to the kickoff. Maybe we'll see if we can have that in a few future sessions or email blasts or things like this. And because that's something for us to ponder upon, how we can spread around the skills if we're not allowed to meet in person, but we will.
Yeah, I don't know, I didn't see it to see who asked that one, but I do know there's been a fair amount of stuff on Chief Delphi lately about online CADing and what have you. So like I'm a design crazy guy, but one thing is for sure, we don't want to slow down the good work that William is doing with the coding. So that's got to stay and not get disrupted. We'd have to find a way to add something in with CAD, if that works. Or if one of you want to offer that, hey, if we give you the Zoom connection, you want to run some CAD sessions, that would be okay too. I know that a lot of our teams actually in their classroom run their robotics program and do it fully through CAD or Onshape or whatever. So many different software platforms out there.
John,
Yep.
will there be files in Onshape? Would be able to download files for Onshape for CADing? Absolutely.
One of the things I could do, Ian McTavish, 4152 out of Huntsville. He's got a ton of them, and I know that one of Paul's old, Paul's friends, but also a mentor of his team. Paul, I'm forgetting your team number already. Can you believe it? Oh my.
Well,
Lord.
you are kind of
Yeah,
eligible.
4007, the chocolates. I remember the chocolates.
4001.
One.
Oh my
So
gosh.
anyway, I know, and Bob Cherry has done a lot of good work with CAD too. But there are good resources out there. And I know that the 2019 year, Ian McTavish ran his whole class through the robot through the whole class, designing and building it using CAD, and all those files and videos are saved, including lessons from day one all the way through. So Cheryl, that would be a really good resource. If you don't have his contact, I can send it to you if you like.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Sure. And I mean, he's not the only one, right? But I will send that right away. I've seen the work and I was quite impressed with it. I'm going to send that to you right now.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Do.
So thank you very much, everyone, and really great to see everyone, and looking forward to seeing everyone very soon.
Good night, everyone. Take care, and good luck with your event selection starting Thursday, and we'll see how it all works out. Fingers crossed.
Thanks.
Good night.
Okay, good night.
John, can I ask a question before I head out?
Oh, of course.
Question about game pieces. Does First Canada have any plans for helping teams acquire game pieces? Because I know sometimes like getting game pieces from the States is really hard, or getting them from international places, with regards to whatever the game pieces are for this year's game.
Yeah. Well, you know, sometimes they tell us that if we want, we could order an extra game piece with the Andy Mark credits, or, you know, for your opting out for the robot kit,
Right,
the
yeah.
chassis and all that kind of stuff. So if they don't tell us that, then so there's a connect there, but we don't honestly know. And Parth, I'll tell you, I have, Andy Mark's a great guy. He's a really good friend of mine, but I remember years ago, I had such a debate with him, and an argument, and it was, you know, week 5 of the build season, and I was tired. It was 1 a.m, and I'm calling him, right, telling him like, why the heck does First put stuff in here that they know we're not going to be able to get enough of, whether that was the Bosch gearboxes and all that from way back when. So my long-winded answer to you is, if they don't announce that, what I try to do, so it's kind of like an indirect way to support the teams is, and it was part of the reason why getting Studica as a warehouse and getting them as a vendor for a robotics part and an Andy Mark supplier of sorts. So we never have a conversation like, oh, does Studica know what the game parts are and this kind of stuff? I don't know what he knows and what he meets with Andy Mark on. But what I do tell him is to talk to Andy Mark. And if Andy Mark knows of something that is going to be in high demand, that please stock it at our Studica warehouse too.
Also,
So
sorry.
That's a long way around that, but that's the only ethical way to address that piece without knowing in advance, right?
Yeah, fair enough. I just remember the bottleneck with trying to get game pieces in specifically recent games, and so it's good to know that First Canada's at least thinking about it. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, and you know, the other piece part though also, so whether it's the wiffle balls, the worst part was those gray balls. Remember that from the year Stronghold, yeah, those gray balls, honest to goodness. And then they were charging $40 a ball, and they were like $6 balls. And ever since that point in time, so this is my answer to you. Derek may not know what the game pieces are, but he orders tons in advance now. Like the last year, he had 2 pallets about 10 feet high of spare parts, like spare game pieces that will be available for our teams. So for sure, as soon as you know what the game is, you could email Studica right away and say, if you have available game pieces, I'd like to put on order or hold 10 or 12, whatever, and they'll do it.
Last year, Paul put together a list of places we can shop around, whether it's Home Depot or Canadian Tire, and that really helped because I found myself running around all over looking for parts and even small things like rivets and the whole work. It was just very difficult, but what Paul gave us was quite a big help.
Yes, I know, Cheryl, no matter how prepared you are, there's always so much running around to do. And as you know now, the teams that either have, even though they already have a good supply of robot parts, because I remember back when Paul came into my school for the first time and he saw our storage room, and it was the size of about a 10 by 12 foot room, shelves everywhere, just bursting with robot parts from every kind of wheel you could think about and what have you. But anyway, my point is that as soon as that game is released, those smart teams, they go and they buy those pieces right away. And they know they're going to buy, if you need pneumatic wheels this year, 6-inch pneumatic, they're buying 4 sets or whatever. And then what happens is, like the beginning of COVID, supply and demand, there was nothing left, no toilet paper left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, John, while we're talking about Studica here, I know this is something that you have absolutely nothing to do with per se, but maybe you can advocate for this. Their shipping rates are very out of whack compared to pretty much everyone else. Like, we're lucky that we have some mentors that work in that area that can actually go and pick up from there. But if we just sometimes, you just want something relatively small, fit in a small box, it's something like $60 to ship it from Mississauga to Hamilton. And I know they're a big company and they probably have a contract with a shipper or something like that. But you might want to discuss with Derek that maybe they might get a little bit more business from FRC teams if they took a look at their shipping rates for small orders or that kind of thing, or had some alternatives. But
yeah,
just
Matt,
a thought.
Yeah, you know what? Fire me an email, just to remind me, of course, and I'll revisit that discussion with him. I will tell you that we have had that exact discussion many times, and he always gives me a good reason, and I just can't remember it right now. But again, maybe he could do a trade-off, make the overall shipping cheaper, but I don't know, do something different. I don't know, but for sure, your shipping charges just got a lot cheaper this year because of $1,000 from First. But I will definitely talk to him about that. I will for sure.
Okay, yeah, just
I've heard that from
bug in his ear again.
Yeah, no problem. Good. Okay. All right. Well, again, the audience is dwindling, so thanks everyone. Good to have all of you on here. Don't hesitate to tell us anytime what you think we could do better. We're happy to listen and try to find better ways to do things. And I really do look forward to, I think it's next week, the 21st, whatever, when I'm meeting with the key role leads to really dig in and get a solution to these single day events and what that schedule looks like, and try to maximize as much matches, team attendance that can be there, and the did I say matches already? Yeah. Oh, and by the way, last time we were on, I gave you guys a picture of 10 plus team members allowed at these venues, and then 20 plus at these ones. I'm digging a little bit deeper, and I'm finding that those numbers are a little bit better than what I told you. So that's good. So we'll have to wait and see how we do as far as we get close to the events with COVID and all that. Anyway, take care, everyone. Good night. Thanks, William, for helping out, and Paul too. And
thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for your dedication. We'll talk to you later. Stay safe.
Want to see you.